I never expected life to circle back like that. Years ago, she was the kind of girl everyone noticed the moment she walked into a room. Not just because of her looks, but because she had direction, discipline, and a future that seemed almost guaranteed. And then, she vanished from that path. Time moved on. So did I. By the time I built a name for myself in the industry, I had already seen hundreds of faces, talented, beautiful, ambitious. But none of them carried that quiet depth I remembered from her. Then one night, at a routine industry dinner, everything changed. She walked in, not as a guest, but as staff. Balancing a tray in her hands, moving carefully between tables, avoiding eye contact. If I hadn't been paying attention, I might have missed her completely. But something about the way she held herself, it felt familiar. When she came closer, it hit me instantly. It was her. Not the girl from before, but still her. I said her name without thinking. She paused, clearly caught off guard, her eyes searching my face like she was trying to place a memory that just wouldn't come. There was hesitation in her voice when she spoke to me. Respectful. Careful. Distant. Like I was just another customer. And in that moment, I realized something strange. The past I remembered so clearly meant nothing to her now. But I didn't correct her. I didn't remind her of who I used to be. Instead, I gave her something simple, a way forward. A business card. Nothing more. She looked at it for a second, like she wasn't sure if it was real or just some kind of joke. People in her position don't usually trust sudden opportunities. Life teaches you to be cautious. I didn't push her. I just left. But I knew one thing for certain, that wasn't the last time our paths would cross. And when they did, everything would change. 3 days later, my phone rang. Her voice came through, hesitant, but determined. That was the moment everything began. She had the kind of presence this industry hunts for. Not just beauty, but something deeper, something that lingers in people's minds. With the right timing, the right exposure, and the right push, success wasn't a question, it was a matter of when. And I made sure that, when, came fast. From that day on, she rose step by step, exactly as I expected. No scandals, no attitude, no unnecessary trouble. She followed every plan, trusted every decision. She became the face everyone talked about. My most valuable artist. Everything was smooth, until that video. I watched it again. And again. Then I called her. No answer. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, thinking. Then I grabbed my keys and left. By the time I reached her apartment, the hallway was silent. I rang the bell. No response. I waited. Checked the time. Tried again. Still nothing. After a few minutes, I entered the passcode. The door unlocked with a soft sound. I paused at the entrance, giving one last knock, just in case. Then I stepped inside. And stopped. She wasn't there. Instead, someone else stood in the living room. A man. Casual. Comfortable. Like he belonged there. Even without a clear memory, I recognized him instantly. Some people don't change. I asked one simple question. Where is she? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me like I was the intruder. Funny. I didn't bother explaining myself. My eyes drifted to the shoe rack, then down to his feet. He was wearing my slippers. I felt a flicker of irritation, but it passed quickly. I've never liked sharing my things. Once someone else uses them, they're no longer mine. Still, I kept my composure. Calm. Polite. I introduced myself like it was a business meeting. I'm her manager, and her boyfriend. That got a reaction. His expression changed instantly. Pale. Stiff. For a moment, no one spoke. A year ago, things had shifted between us. It wasn't planned. There was no grand confession, no dramatic moment. Just time. Work kept us close, day after day, project after project. Eventually, the line blurred. I remember one night clearly. A deal that mattered. A dinner that lasted too long. Too many drinks, too many smiles that had to be maintained. I held it together until the contract was signed. Then everything collapsed the moment I stepped outside. By the time we got back, I could barely stand. She stayed. Took care of me without saying much. But I heard it, that quiet concern in her voice. Something I had never heard from her before. It surprised me. Made me laugh, even in that state. I joked about pushing myself for her sake. She didn't laugh it off. She just said she was lucky to have met me. Simple words. But after that, things were different. We didn't need to explain anything. We just understood. And now, standing in that living room, I looked at the man in front of me. The one she once chose over everything. The one who disappeared. For a brief moment, a strange thought crossed my mind. Maybe I was never the one she truly reached for. Maybe I was just the one who happened to be there when she needed someone. The door opened. She walked in, carrying grocery bags. And the moment she saw us, everything froze. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I let out a quiet laugh. Overthink it. I repeated, almost casually. If I didn't think ahead for you, do you think you'd still be standing where you are today? She fell silent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. In this industry, one careless move is enough to ruin everything. A single photo, a single rumor, it spreads faster than you can control. And once it's out, no explanation matters. I paused, letting that sink in. You think this is just about him? I added, glancing toward the bedroom. It's not. It's about you. She tightened her grip on the grocery bag, her fingers slightly pale. I've already handled the video, I continued. It won't leak. But next time? You might not be this lucky. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt heavy. Then I stepped closer, my tone softening just a little. If you want to help him, fine. I won't stop you. But it has to be done my way. She finally looked up at me. What do you mean? I'll arrange everything, I said. A place to stay. A job? Enough to keep him stable. But he doesn't stay here. And he doesn't appear around you publicly. I held her gaze. That's the line. She hesitated again. That hesitation irritated me more than I expected. Before she could answer, the bedroom door opened. He walked out, already changed, acting like nothing had happened. Like this was all normal. I didn't even look at him. Instead, I picked up my keys and turned toward the door. Let's go, I said flatly. He quickly followed, all smiles again, nodding as if he had no objections at all. Just before stepping out, I glanced back at her one last time. She was still standing there, unmoving. Watching. I couldn't read her expression. But for some reason, that look stayed with me longer than anything else that night. I looked at her and smiled. Calm. Gentle. Controlled. But my words carried weight. You had other options, I said slowly. You could have booked him a hotel. Sent him money. Kept things clean. I let my gaze linger for a second. Instead, you brought him here. Her lips parted slightly, but I didn't give her time to respond. This is the first time, I continued. So I'll let it go. A brief pause. But don't cross that line again. Right then, the bedroom door opened. He stepped out, instantly sensing the tension in the room. For a split second, something flashed across his face, something subtle, almost smug. Then it was gone. Replaced with that same obedient, harmless expression. I'm ready, he said quietly. Let's go. I grabbed my keys and headed toward the door. Then, as if it just crossed my mind, I stopped and turned back. Oh, one more thing. I met her eyes. I won't be coming here anymore. My tone was light, almost casual. You know how I am. I don't like using things that have been touched by others. I gave a small smile. Just throw everything I left here away. After dropping him off at a hotel, I didn't go home. I went straight to work. Milan. Another project. Another responsibility. Another artist who needed me there in person. In this line of work, you don't get the luxury of slowing down. By the time everything wrapped up and I returned, a week had already passed. She came to pick me up at the airport. Only after landing did I finally feel it, the fatigue catching up, settling deep into my bones. I rubbed my temples, trying to stay alert. Everything went well, she asked. I glanced at her and laughed lightly. When has it not? She smiled, relaxed. True. There's nothing you can't handle. Then, almost casually, she added, I moved. I looked at her. You said you wouldn't go back there anymore. So I changed places. I nodded faintly. Then her voice softened. I'm sorry. I turned to her, a faint smile returning. It's fine. First mistake. A small pause. Next time, I won't be this forgiving. She smiled again, a little brighter this time. There won't be a next time. I didn't respond. We both understood how things worked. I've never believed in controlling people. The more you try to hold on, the more you lose. If something is going to break, it will break, no matter how tightly you grip it. So I don't waste energy preventing things. I just decide when to walk away. And I only give one warning. For a while, everything went back to normal. Work filled the days. Projects lined up one after another. She mentioned him once, briefly. I treated it like it was already over. Until it wasn't. Around that time, I secured a major role for her in a historical drama. A big opportunity. Once filming started, I shifted my focus elsewhere. But maybe I had been running too long without stopping. Because suddenly, my body gave out. The fever hit fast. No warning. Everything blurred. My head felt like it was splitting apart. Even standing became difficult. They sent me home. Forced me to rest. I didn't argue. For once, I let everything go. Turned off my phone. Closed the curtains. And slept. When I woke up, it was already night. The room was completely dark. For a moment, I just lay there, trying to gather my thoughts. Then I reached for my phone and turned it back on. Almost instantly, something felt off. Missed calls. Dozens of them. Messages flooding in. The last one caught my attention. From PR, "Are you awake? Something happened. Check the trending page." A faint sense of unease crept in. I opened it. And there it was, at the very top. Marked in bold. Breaking. Her name. And his. Side by side. This time, there was no stopping it. The previous incident had been quietly buried before it ever saw the light of day. But now, whoever released this knew exactly what they were doing. No warning. No negotiation. Just exposure. The setting was unmistakable, a filming location, dressed in period scenery. Everything looked elegant, carefully constructed, and completely useless in hiding what mattered. The moment I pressed play, I already knew. This wasn't something that could be brushed aside easily. The footage was clear. Too clear. She was smiling. Not the polite, distant smile she showed in public, but something lighter, more natural. The kind that didn't belong in front of cameras. And beside her, him. He stayed close, watching her every step like it was instinct. Then it happened. A small misstep. She faltered. And before anyone else could react, he was already there. Lowering himself, checking her ankle, his movements careful, almost familiar. Even without sound, the meaning was obvious. The way he looked at her. The way she responded. It wasn't something you could explain away with a simple sentence. The video ended there. But it was enough. More than enough. Because it wasn't just the video. There were photos too. Fragments of moments, shared meals, casual interactions, the kind that only happen when people are comfortable with each other. Put together, they told a story. And the public doesn't need the full truth. They only need something believable. My head felt heavy, the fever still lingering. But my thoughts, crystal clear. I made the call. Respond immediately. Hesitation. No denial. Redirect the narrative. My voice was rough, but steady. Position him as staff. Assistant, bodyguard, doesn't matter. Build the image. I paused briefly, organizing everything in my mind. Push her professionalism. Highlight her relationship with the crew. Use past footage, edit it, circulate it. In this game, perception is everything. Control the comments. Guide the discussion. The team moved fast. They always do. I ended the call and opened my messages. Media inquiries flooded in, carefully worded, but all asking the same thing. I responded one by one. Precise. Measured. Untouchable. Time passed without me noticing. 2 hours. Maybe more. These kinds of situations, they're not difficult. As long as there's no undeniable evidence, everything can be reshaped. That's how this industry works. At the top of my screen, her name stayed there. Unread messages. Missed calls. I didn't open them. Didn't reply. I just stared. Thinking. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about damage control. I was thinking about something else. Something personal. Then another call came in. Unexpected. Property management. I answered, slightly distracted. They informed me about a car, parked in the wrong space. It took me a second to realize. That place. I hadn't been back since that day. I told them I'd handle it. When I arrived, I saw it immediately. The car. Parked carelessly. Unfamiliar, yet not. I stepped closer. Through the windshield, something caught my eye. A pack of cigarettes. I didn't need to think. She doesn't smoke. Which meant, he had been using it. I let out a quiet laugh. Not amused. Not angry. Just empty. I don't need this car anymore, I said calmly. Have it towed. Then I went upstairs. The hallway felt the same. But not quite. I stopped in front of the door. For a moment, I just stood there. Then I entered the code. Error. I paused. Then tried again. A different set of numbers. This time, the door didn't open either. I stared at the keypad, unmoving. And without meaning to, a memory surfaced. A long time ago. A simple moment. A girl carefully picking out a cake, her expression brighter than anything else in the room. It wasn't for me. Never was. And maybe, it never would be. Maybe that feeling had been there from the very beginning. And maybe, it had finally reached its end. The door unlocked. I pushed it open just enough to look inside. That was all I needed. The space no longer felt like hers. Clothes were scattered carelessly. His presence was everywhere, obvious, unhidden. Her things mixed in with his, like they belonged together. It didn't take much imagination to understand what kind of life they had been living here. I've always been someone who stays in control. Problems are meant to be solved. Emotions are inefficient. But in that moment, I felt something rare. Disgust. A physical reaction I couldn't suppress. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and stepped back. Then I shut the door. Quietly. A few hours later, I was already on a plane. By the time I arrived, filming was still underway. Familiar faces greeted me. I responded with the same calm professionalism as always. Nothing in my expression gave anything away. The assistant director pulled me aside, curiosity written all over his face. He asked about the rumors. About the man who had been showing up around her. I smiled it off. A temporary hire, I said. He laughed, but I could tell he didn't fully believe it. Neither did I. When I reached her trailer, I stopped at the entrance. The signs were obvious. Someone else had been there. Recently. I didn't step inside. Instead, I found her assistant and asked him to pass along a message. Then I waited. At some point, exhaustion caught up with me. I closed my eyes for a moment and drifted off. When I woke up, she was already there. Sitting beside me. A blanket draped over my shoulders. I frowned slightly, removed it, and reached for a wipe. Old habits. Clean. Controlled. Untouched. She watched everything. Said nothing. But I noticed the change in her expression. I ignored it. "Where is he?" I asked. She didn't answer directly. Just one sentence. "I don't have a choice." That was enough. I understood. Some things don't need to be explained. I took out the document and handed it to her. A contract. Simple. Practical. If the world believed a story, then reality had to match it. That's how you survive. She looked at it, confused. I explained calmly. Have him sign it. No anger. No accusation. Just a solution. She kept staring at me, like she was trying to find something beneath the surface. But there was nothing there. Not anymore. "What did you expect?" I asked lightly. "That I came here to argue." She didn't answer. Because deep down, she already knew. In this world, everything has value. Feelings don't last. But usefulness does. As long as she could still stand in front of a camera, she still had worth. And I don't waste things that have value. I looked at her one last time. "You know how I am," I said. That was enough. Her face went pale. She understood. Some lines, once crossed, can't be redrawn. From that moment on, there was nothing left to say. Only work. She stepped forward slightly, like she wanted to stop me. Her voice trembled when she called my name. I didn't respond. Another voice cut in. Sharp. Defensive. He stepped in front of her, like he had every right to. I almost laughed. The situation felt predictable. He tried to provoke me. I didn't bother engaging. People like him don't matter. I gave one final instruction. Sign the contract. Then I nodded politely. Professional. Distant. Like speaking to a client. And I left. After that, everything became simple. Clear. I handed her matters over to someone else. A capable replacement. There was no need for me to stay involved. I had already moved on to bigger things. In this industry, you learn one thing quickly: knowing how to start is important. But knowing when to walk away? That's what really matters. And I've always been good at that. I replied calmly, "This is the reality of your position." She frowned, clearly unconvinced. "To you, they're just fans," I continued. "But in truth, they're part of the foundation holding you up. Without them, your visibility drops, your endorsements disappear, and your influence fades faster than you think." She didn't speak. So I went on. "You don't have to like it. But you do have to respect it." Her expression hardened slightly. "And Makoto?" she asked. "What about him?" I leaned back in my chair, fingers tapping lightly against the table. "He's a variable," I said simply. "An unstable one." She looked at me, waiting. "If keeping him costs you your position, your reputation, and your future, then the answer is obvious." A brief silence settled between us. But I could see it in her eyes. She didn't want to let go. Not of him. Not of whatever that past meant to her. I exhaled slowly. "Let me make this clear," I said. "This isn't about me. Not anymore. This is about you making a choice." Her hands tightened slightly at her sides. "Your career, or him." She lowered her gaze. Didn't answer. And that, in itself, was an answer. I didn't press further. There was no point. Some decisions can't be forced. They have to be made willingly. Or not at all. After she left, I sat there for a while, reviewing the reports again. Fan sentiment was already shifting. Discontent spreading. Control slipping. It was exactly the kind of situation that could spiral overnight. So I made another decision. If she couldn't cut the problem out, then I would reduce her importance. Resources were redistributed. Newcomers pushed forward. Exposure divided. Opportunities no longer centered around her alone. It wasn't punishment. It was risk management. Of course, the reaction came quickly. Her fans noticed. Complaints surfaced. Accusations followed. But none of it mattered. Because in this industry, replacement is always being prepared in advance. No one is irreplaceable. Still, there was one thing I hadn't expected. She didn't push back. Didn't argue. Didn't resist. She simply endured it. Working non-stop. Taking every schedule. Showing up, performing, smiling. Even when it was obvious she was exhausted. Then one day, she sent me a photo. No caption. Just her arm. And 4 drip attached. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then sent money. Nothing more. Later, I saw another image. Taken by someone else. She was in the hospital bed. Surrounded by people. But only one person sat closest. Him. Close enough to touch. Close enough to cross every line that was supposed to exist. I looked at it for a long time. Then I laughed. Quietly. It was inevitable. When the situation finally escalated, it came fast. Fan groups united. Demands were made. Clear. Direct. Remove him. I read through the reports. Every detail. Every complaint. Every piece of evidence. And one thing stood out more than anything else: she had chosen to stand on his side. Against the very people who had built her up. That was when I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It wasn't temporary. It was a decision. And decisions have consequences. I looked at her and said quietly, "This is your foundation. The very thing that keeps you standing." She met my eyes, silent. "Do you really think you got here on your own?" I continued. "Without them, without everything behind you, where would you be?" For a moment, she didn't respond. Then suddenly, she laughed. Not the gentle, distant smile I was used to. Something sharper. Almost mocking. "Is this about us?" she asked directly. "Because we broke up?" I paused. She didn't stop. "You've been tightening my schedule, cutting my opportunities, now targeting him over something this small? Are you using work to get back at me?" For the first time, I really looked at her. Carefully. Like I was seeing her for the first time. And in that moment, something became very clear. Maybe I had never truly understood her at all. Everything, her struggles, her gratitude, even the way she stayed by my side, maybe it was all just calculation. Or maybe, to her, it had always been compromise. And now that the past had returned, she chose it without hesitation. I smiled. Calm. Detached. "We're partners," I said. "I'm giving you professional advice. Whether you follow it, is your decision." She didn't argue further. She just turned and left. After she was gone, I sat there for a while. Thinking. Then I made a decision. If something is bound to collapse, then it's better to step away early. The rest unfolded exactly as expected. Conflicts escalated. Fans grew restless. And eventually, she came to me herself. To terminate the contract. She didn't choose another company. She chose independence. A studio of her own. "I can't keep wasting time here," she said. I smiled when I heard that. Didn't argue. Didn't remind her of anything. Just wished her well. After that, I moved on. Completely. There was no reason to look back. But news has a way of finding you. Even when you don't care. At first, things looked stable. She still had attention. Still had support. But the foundation was already cracking. Without structure, without control, everything becomes fragile. Then came the shift. Her relationship was no longer hidden. And instead of calming things down, they pushed it forward. Turned it into a story. A narrative. A romance meant to win sympathy. But people aren't as easy to convince as they used to be. The reaction was immediate. Doubt. Mockery. Disappointment. The more they tried to explain, the worse it became. Bit by bit, everything unraveled. Support faded. Opportunities disappeared. And eventually, so did she. I didn't follow the details. Didn't need to. Some endings are predictable long before they happen. The last time I saw her? Was by coincidence. A hotel. A passing moment. She wore a mask. Avoided my gaze. But even then, there were things you couldn't hide. I didn't say her name. Didn't ask questions. Just treated her like anyone else. A stranger. Because that's what she had become. I walked past her without stopping. Without hesitation. Without looking back. Some things belong to the past. And once they fade, they should stay there.